Welcome back to another episode of the Four Wide Podcast. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard, along with Dan Kiley and Jonathan Williams. We're excited for the show this weekend. It is Wild Card Weekend in the NFL, so we're getting ready to jump straight into that. There's been a couple of good games so far. Right now, there's currently the Giants and Vikings are in the fourth quarter with about 7 minutes and 45 seconds left. Giants currently lead 31-24 in that game as well. But there was a game yesterday, and there is a game or two games yesterday, and there was a game earlier today that we can talk about as well. So yesterday there was the Seahawks and 49ers. 49ers ended up winning that one 41-23. And Jaguars and Chargers, where the Jaguars made an insane comeback in that game after being down 27-0 in the first half. And ended up winning 31-30. So, fellas, how are we feeling so far about Wild Card Weekend?
I think it's been a crazy start to the wild card weekend. I mean, like we were talking about a little bit pre-show, one of the things that really jumped out to me was how many backup quarterbacks are playing, and they're actually playing well. Brock Purdy, you can make an argument that he's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. We don't know how long that's going to last, but San Francisco looked freaking good yesterday, boys, and their defense is arguably the best defense that's alive in this playoff format. So if they can get this level of play out of Brock Purdy, I know Jonathan made a comparison to Stetson Bennett. I think that's very accurate, and you can spit on that if you want to, but man, I don't even know where to start with the Chargers. But yesterday's games, the 49ers looked really, really good, and then with that Jaguars-Chargers game, just absolutely insane game. But I don't really take either one of those teams seriously after that game.
Yeah, so actually, the reason I made the Stetson Bennett comparison with Brock Purdy is because I was watching ESPN, or it was on a screen somewhere where I was at, and it was Dan Orlovsky saying that Stetson Bennett and Brock Purdy, or he was making the comparison that Stetson Bennett was to Brock Purdy. And I don't know that he was making the same comparison that I was, but because I couldn't hear the audio of what he was saying, I just saw it on the screen. But I took it as like, you know what? They kind of are very similar because they were both in the same situation at one point, and then when both of them got their shot to take over their team and lead their team, they just started balling out, and everybody was like, "What the heck?" Because Stetson Bennett was kind of the Mr. Irrelevant of college football, and now Brock Purdy was the Mr. Irrelevant for his draft
Literally,
class, and
yeah.
Someone was saying that, if he wasn't Mr. Irrelevant in his last draft class, we'd be talking about Brock Purdy being Offensive Rookie of the Year probably because he's been playing that well, and he played that well yesterday against the Seahawks. So, yeah, I was definitely impressed with the 49ers. I think they're a legit contender to take home this year's Super Bowl and have a spot in the Super Bowl to represent the NFC. And then the Jacksonville game, I honestly can't even comment that much about it because when it was halftime, I went to bed. I was like, man, Trevor Lawrence got 4 interceptions. This is a blowout. I'm hitting the hay. I'm going to go ahead and get my sleep. And the next thing you know, I wake up and it's that Jacksonville freaking won somehow. So
The complete irony of this, and I sent this in the text to you guys, is that Tony Dungy was calling that game. Now, I remember being at my buddy Trey Couch's house. We were sitting there. We were watching the Indianapolis Colts play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was a Monday night football game. The Buccaneers were up 21-0 at halftime, and Tony Dungy talked about how he went into the locker room and he told them, like, hey guys, we really only have to get that first drive going. And then he's like, he said the most important drives were the first 2 drives out of halftime. He's like, if we can score on those and then just start to play any type of defense at all, like we're really not that far out of it. And that was a 21-point game. Well, the Jaguars had just scored a touchdown going into the half to make it a 20-point game, and they were getting the ball back. But I'm like you. I turned the game off. I rewatched the Georgia radio broadcast version of the ESPN National Championship game. So this is the 3rd time I've watched it. Can you tell?
Good old Scott Howard.
Yeah. So I'm watching that thing, and then I wake up this morning and my phone is just like, and I'm like, what in the hell is going on? 2 major news stories broke. One that not so happy, and then the other one was that. So incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I texted you guys earlier today talking about the Bills and Dolphins game, and I think the same kind of thing kind of applies to the Jaguars game and Chargers, where one team just turned the ball over 5 times. And if the Jaguars don't fall victim to throwing 3 first quarter interceptions and having 5 total turnovers in that game, Jaguars just they were in control of the game outside of those turnovers. One team was just better than the other, and at the end of the day, those turnovers can only do so much. The Chargers got real stagnant on offense after being up 27-0. only scored 3 more points after that. That's where your blame goes. You can't blame your defense if you're the Chargers. You got to look at it and go, man, how were we up 27-0 and we only put 3 points up in the second half of that game? That's on us. After getting 5 turnovers, there's no reason you should lose that game unless the other team is just better than you at the end of the day. And I think that's what played out.
I mean, it's the same story that we talked about with Michigan and TCU, like I think we all can agree that Michigan was the more talented team between Michigan and TCU. But if
Absolutely.
Michigan doesn't throw 2 pick sixes, doesn't fumble the ball on the goal line, doesn't go for it on 4th down in opponent territory and not get it.
I think
and
they spotted them, like 28 points in that game, essentially?
Yeah, and that was your ball game. At that point, that was it. That's what decided the game, was all 4 of those mistakes, the turnovers, everything. That's what won TCU the ball game, and TCU was better that day. And so they had every right to move on and go play Georgia in the national championship, regardless of what that final score said. But it's the same situation, like the Chargers played 1 good half of football, but there's 2 halves in football. You got to play both. So you can't come out here and only play 1 half, kind of like the Falcons did the Super Bowl, and then just not come ready to play in the second half and try and coast to a victory. It don't work like that, especially in the playoffs. So, yeah, things caught up to the Chargers, and God bless that man that bet $1 million and whatever dollars on the game at halftime,
$1.4 million
bet to win like $11,000, and then he freaking loses. Like, God bless that man.
So, yeah, but the one takeaway that I had was Justin Herbert is supposed to be an elite quarterback. And I have come on this podcast and said that I thought Justin Herbert was one of the better quarterbacks in the league. If you're one of the best quarterbacks in the league, that can't happen to you. He threw 1 touchdown in the entire game. Austin Eckler, I don't think I'm out of school here saying that we all agree that Austin Eckler is the best player on that football team, right?
Yeah, I would say
and
so.
he had a hell of a first half. But there's no scenario in my mind where Austin Eckler should ever finish a game with 35 yards.
In 13 carries, that's bad.
No scenario where that should ever happen. And then Eckler, and then so if that's the case, either he's injured or you mismanaged the football game. And then for Herbert to only throw 1 touchdown the entire game, that's if I'm ownership of the Chargers, I have a lot of questions.
Well, I think it comes down to this. Like when you see that, right? You're talking about Austin Eckler. If you look at the stat sheet, I mean, they only had as a team 67 yards rushing in that game, and passing they only had 230 or 273, and 1 touchdown from Justin Herbert. So here's the thing: at the end of the day, Jacksonville was playing an extremely solid defensive performance. What got them is the fact that the other team's offense kept getting given the ball and kept them on the field for too long in the first half. And so that's where you got those touchdowns from Austin Eckler in the first half, those 2 touchdowns. And they basically shut down the Chargers team in the second half entirely. And they would have done the same thing in the first half, it sounds like, if there weren't 3 first quarter interceptions. I mean, that's the difference in this game. At the end of the day, 4 total first half
no, they were all in the first half.
No, I'm saying 3 first quarter interceptions.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
The 4th interception was in the first half as well, and they fumbled, I think, in the second half. But there was 5 total turnovers in the game. But my point being, had there not been 4 first half turnovers, this Jaguars defense had them shut down all game long. I mean, 67 yards rushing in a game for an NFL team is just abysmal. I mean, that's terrible.
And you have to give Peterson a little bit of credit, too, because a lot of coaches would have overreacted in that situation and pulled Lawrence or taking the ball out of his hands. He didn't do either of those things. He put the ball in his hands. But if you went back and watched that game, and I watched the highlight package because I was trying to figure out what in the hell happened, a lot of those were unlucky. I mean, honestly, listen, a lot of times we talk about how the stat goes to the quarterback, but it's not really the quarterback's fault. I mean, 2 of those interceptions were not his fault. And then the one interception 100% was his fault. But the 4th interception was the guy made a hell of a diving play on a ball he was throwing away. So, that's crazy. But that's the one game. That's just crazy.
I think something that I've always kind of thought about the Los Angeles Chargers, and if they actually have any type of fan base, they might come after me for saying this because they feel like I'll probably be talking dirty on some people. Yeah, they don't have a fan base. We've seen that. So I guess I don't need to worry about that. But like they have good players. Like obviously Austin Eckler, I agree with you, Dan. I would say Austin Eckler is the best player on that football team, especially offensively speaking. I think Herbert is a good quarterback, but he's not in that range that we would talk about Austin Eckler in regards to the running back position. But when you start looking at their wide receiver position, like Keenan Allen is a good wide receiver. He is good. Mike Williams is a good wide receiver. And then they have some like pretty decent tight ends, but they don't have that X factor, in my opinion, at the wide receiver position, in my opinion. Like I don't think people would say that Keenan Allen is in that elite category with the Stephon Diggs, the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases of that. And I would say the same, like they just don't have that X factor that a lot of really talented offenses, go down the list of any top offense in the NFL and you can name one of those most valuable offensive players, playmakers, can do anything and everything that you want them to on offense. And I think that's kind of what the Chargers are missing right now, because that's what every really good quarterback has in the league right now, unless you're Aaron Rodgers and you're just trying to figure things out on the fly. But they've had him for a long time and they still have him now, but Justin Herbert does not have that. But what were you going to say, Stoddard?
What I was going to say too is like you got to remember back in week 8, Mike Williams got hurt because they didn't rest him in that game. He went out and he didn't play today. So you don't even have him. Once again, you
And
don't
Keenan
have
Allen missed
necessarily
most of the season.
You don't have elite receivers as a whole. You have good, honestly, great receivers in the NFL in general. Like I would say they're top tier overall, but they're not elite. They're not in the top category of it. And then you didn't even have Mike Williams today. I think that was huge.
Well, I mean, so at Georgia, we get so spoiled of having elite tight ends, right? And for the longest time, the Chargers had the elite of the elite tight ends in Antonio Gates. And for some reason, I was thinking that they had Hunter Henry out there, but he's not there. I mean,
he got traded.
The tight end making plays for them was Trey McKitty.
Yeah, shouts to Trey McKitty.
How about a Trey McKitty sighting? I didn't even know he was in the NFL. Good for him.
He had 2 catches today.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, that's really one of the things for me that's really missing out of that offense is they don't have a pass catching tight end. It seems to me like the trend across all of football is that you have to have a pass catching tight end. I mean, I know we saw it with Gronk, but he was kind of like a one-off, right? And with Antonio Gates, like you could never duplicate that or replicate that. But then all of a sudden we saw Travis Kelce, and he's starting to have, he's having a Gronk-like career. I think when he's done playing, he's obviously going to be a Hall of Fame guy. But
yeah,
I think Georgia should get a little bit of credit, and it's so funny coming out of my mouth because I used to be the person who would tweet, "Oh my God, Georgia completed the pass to a tight end." Like, take me now, Lord, because
that's how it used to be, though. Yeah, that's how it used to be. Outside after we had like Orson Charles, after that year, like we really there was like a good 5-6 year stretch where we just didn't throw to the tight end very much. Even before we had Brock Bowers, I remember I actually wrote something talking about Eric Gilbert coming to Georgia, and that season that he ended up coming to Georgia, I said even if he comes to Georgia, like the tight ends at Georgia don't get the ball. And then all of a sudden, like after that, you get Brock Bowers and they start going crazy with it. And all of a sudden, there's just a complete shift in identity. But
I'm just more impressed that you actually wrote something, Stoddard.
Hey, easy.
Yeah, it was funny to me because we had Aaron Murray on our show the other day. And if you go back and listen to that interview, he talks about when he went to Kansas City. So Travis Kelce's first year, he was injured. So his second year was Aaron Murray's rookie year. And he was his, rookie team tight end or whatever. And in the first preseason game, he threw a 40-yard touchdown pass to
his first
Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
First career pass. And he said he never got to see Travis Kelce again. But his point of it was that was the first time in his entire career that he realized you could base an offense around a tight end and be extremely productive. So I think the tight end position is coming back in a major way. And I think that is a major issue that the Chargers have is they don't have one that can really open up those field for those receivers.
And look, here's the thing too. Like you don't have to have the Travis Kelce or the George Kittles to have a good offense. Like at least in my opinion, you don't have to go out there and have a tier 1 tight end. Like think of a lot of these other offenses like Mike Gesicki for the Miami Dolphins. He's a good tight end. He's not elite, but he's good. And he's been productive for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert for the Philadelphia Eagles this season prior to his injury, like he was not elite coming into this season, but he's good enough to where he can be productive and kind of open up the offense a little bit. So I agree with that. Every really good offense needs to have a good tight end. You got to have someone that has a
Productive
productive
tight end.
tight
Yeah.
end.
Somebody you
Exactly.
can go to on, say, third down, and you need to play over
Absolutely.
the middle or
You
something
got
like
to
that.
have someone that is dependable and consistent at that position, because that's what really opens everything up. That's kind of what kind of spreads things out. You can kind of do a lot of different things with them. So yeah, I think that is already where the NFL is transitioning to. And so yeah, I think the Chargers really just are missing like one or two really key pieces on offense. And then I think things might really start getting rolling for them. But that's just my take as someone that's not a fan of that organization, hasn't really watched most of their games because they're a West Coast team. But just kind of from an outsider's perspective, I kind of think you fix those two things, maybe get some defense a little bit. Then you're really talking about the Chargers being elite again.
Yeah, and another game that let's go back to the other game yesterday, right? We kind of mentioned it a minute ago, talking about the 49ers and Seahawks. That game, by the way, was a 6-point game in the fourth quarter and ended up being
Mhm.
41-23. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they had that big play with Debo Samuel down the sideline
Mhm.
where it was a short pass into the flats. It really wasn't. It wasn't meant to get vertical, but it goes for 60 yards because they had a good tight end out there blocking. It goes right back to what we were just talking about. I mean, so and they also had their running back, I think, that was out there in the flats too. But anyway, the point was that like that San Francisco team is hella dangerous because they went and got Christian McCaffrey, who was an afterthought at the trade deadline. And I would never accuse Christian McCaffrey of not playing hard because I think that guy, his entire career is based on playing hard. But it's almost like, again, just for the lack of a better way to phrase it, it seems like he wasn't giving everything in Carolina towards the end of it. And then all of a sudden, being moved out to the West Coast where he's from, he was reinvigorated and he's playing the best football of his life. And I think the crazy thing about McCaffrey is he has always been an elite talent, but he could never stay healthy. And we're getting to see what a healthy elite McCaffrey on a good roster looks like. And I think Purdy stepping in playing the way he is, that defense is absolutely elite. And DeMarco Ryans is getting a job, y'all. I'm here to tell you, if it's not this year, it's next year. But DeMarco Ryans is getting a job because that defense is hella good.
I think one reason why Brock Purdy is so successful in that offense, not only is it because Kyle Shanahan has his hand dipping in that pot and he's kind of assisting him along the way. Kyle Shanahan is amazing as an offensive coordinator, and he's Todd Monken range type thing. And like when he's in his bag, there is just nothing you can do. But it's also because think about the players that are around Brock Purdy. Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian McCaffrey. Those guys aren't running vertical routes deep down the field. They're not taking deep shots. Everything's close. They're all players that it's just like, get them the ball as quick as you can and let them work and do their thing. And it makes the game a lot easier for Brock Purdy when he's able to do that. And it's a heck of a lot easier when you have a guy like Kyle Shanahan calling the shots. So I think Brock Purdy's in the perfect system for someone that is in their rookie year, wasn't the third string quarterback on on his team, to come into there and be successful, because Kyle Shanahan allows that offense to be successful regardless of who is in there. And that's because when you think of Debo Samuel, like he's running slants, quick under routes, everything like that, and you're just getting him the ball and you let him work. You let him do all the work, just like that touchdown you were talking about, Dan. It wasn't a vertical route, but Debo Samuel basically turned it into a vertical route because he is Debo Samuel. Same with Brandon Ayuk, same with Christian McCaffrey. Like you're just dishing to him out of the backfield and letting him work. So that's what I think allows Brock Purdy to be so successful, and it takes so much of the pressure off his shoulders. And again, why I think they are such a contender in this playoff run.
And one more little tiny thing to add on to what you're talking about is he is surrounded by really accomplished veterans that are very talented. He doesn't have to come in and lead. He can just come in and contribute. And I'm not taking anything away from him. I promise I'm not. We've learned not to do that with Stetson, right? The game manager thing, like he's more than that. He's and Stetson
when you
was
throw for
more than
330
that.
yards in a playoff game, you're
Yeah.
more than that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's my point.
Exactly.
But my point is he is not pressured to do that every single week. It's, hey, take what they're going to give us, make the plays that you can make, eat it when you don't want to do it or whatever. And we don't need you to carry us. And I think that's how Stetson got his start. very similar to your point, Jonathan. I think there are so many similarities where Stetson had so much talent around him. At the very beginning, it was, we just need you to do your part, and then he ascended. And I think that's where we are with Brock Purdy too. He came in, he did what was necessary. Go look at the first couple games. It wasn't that great. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was never bad, but it wasn't great. And now he's just like, he's got that confidence and everybody else believes in him. It has gone through the roof. The similarities are just remarkable, Jonathan. That was a hell of a pull by you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree on that part for sure. If somebody actually said today, I saw, and they were like, let's just start giving Kyle Shanahan any quarterback we can and just see at what point, like where's the skill level that we have to have, because every quarterback that seems to play in that system right now with him has success. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo had success. Trey Lance
Give
was having
him any
success.
Browns quarterback from the last 10 years and let's see what he can make.
I raise you Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, let's give him Marcus Mariota and see if he starts throwing for 300 plus yards in that.
From his back.
It's just crazy to see what they're able to do there. So they advanced, playing next week. We don't know who they're playing just yet, but they moved on. Next game, boys, that was a pretty daggum good one overall, and we kind of hinted at earlier, was the Bills and Dolphins game. Bills end up winning that one 34-31. Real quick, before I even say that, Vikings have the ball, 1:50 left, down by 7, and they're around the 50-yard line, and they just looks like they did not convert a fourth down right there. So ball goes back to the Giants almost over there.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to give Jonathan his roses because Jonathan deserves some roses. He called them, oh gosh, my brain just went blank. But he called them the most fraudulent good team in the NFL, and they have proven to do that. But let's talk Bills Dolphins first, because that was a fantastic game. And I know we're Falcons fans, but do you guys have another team that's kind of like your team? Like for a minute, it was kind of like the Chiefs. Like I was kind of enjoyed rooting for the Chiefs, but I have really started to enjoy rooting for the Bills. Because it's so I will never pick another NFC team because that's not right. Because whatever I want whatever. But I'm kind of like on this Bills bandwagon, and I'm wanting them to win all these football games because that means they're going to play in Mercedes, and I still don't know the reason for that. By the way, if y'all can enlighten this dumb idiot on why the hell it's being played here, I would love to know. But
they just had to have a neutral site game, and I guess for some reason that was
why?
But
why is it neutral site?
It had there was some way with like the seating. Yeah, they couldn't decide home field advantage because of like what happened with the Bills and the Bengals game, and so they basically determined that if that matchup were to happen, it wouldn't be fair to award one single team home field advantage. So they decided to do exactly. So they decided to do a neutral site.
Educating the dumb guy.
I got you.
But I would love to watch that game anyway. So the Bills have kind of like became my like B team, and they're way better than the A team. But they've been a lot of fun to watch. And Josh Allen, actually Aaron Murray, and I'm not going to plug Aaron Murray on I promise, but he tweeted something out. He's like, Josh Allen is the only quarterback I've ever met in my life that can physically manhandle a defensive lineman. That was amazing. But Jeremiah had a great take on this game of how it was close, talking about all the different turnovers, and Jonathan did a great job of relaying it to the TCU Michigan game. You're both spot on. But I think the one thing that we didn't consider, or maybe you did consider, we just haven't talked about, is it's the first time they've been on the field since their boy got hurt. And I think it's difficult to be in that headspace. Like you and I, or none of us have ever been on the field where we lost a teammate, right? And if you think about it for a minute there, they did lose a teammate. I mean, they were able to bring him back, and he's doing well now. But that is in the back of their mind. So the fact that they were able to win, and the Dolphins with a backup quarterback played one hell of a football game, guys.
I told my dad. I told my dad sitting there on the couch watching it, I was like, Buffalo's doing everything they can to keep Miami in this game, because it seemed like every time Buffalo would go down and score and make it a 2-possession game, I'd be like, okay, they're starting to put this game away. And then next thing you know, turnover, Miami's right back down the field and they take advantage of the points. It's like they are doing everything they can to let them hang around. And that's the last thing you want to do especially when you're at home. You don't want to let the away team hang around and keep that momentum on their side, because that's your biggest home factor when you're playing at home in the playoffs, is that momentum stays on your side. And especially when you get that momentum, it's so easy to maintain it because you got the crowd behind you. You're at your home stadium. Everything else is going for you already. Got your own home weather environment. Like Miami is not used to this cold weather that they're playing in. So when you're letting a team like Miami hang around and they kind of pick up some momentum, the crowd's starting to get a little bit out of it and whatnot, that's where things get a little bit dangerous. And Miami came close to pulling off the upset. And who would have known, if they talked about Tua maybe being able to come back if they were able to make it past this week. And if Tua had been able to come back, who knows, maybe Miami would have made a heck of a run in the playoffs and they would have made a Super Bowl berth. But
didn't McDaniels wear the T-shirt, "I wish it was colder," the last time they played in Buffalo?
Probably. That sounds just like McDaniels thing.
But so I made a mistake. That's not the first time they were on the field since, because they played Hamlin.
They played last week, and Patriots started the game off.
That
with
was my fault.
96-yard kick
but still,
return.
It's fresh on their mind. And then the other thing is, did you guys see the first down they gave Singletary to ice the game?
Yeah, I thought that was a little short myself, but
I never saw the ball get anywhere near it because he had his back turned.
Yeah, I think it was. I think the issue on that play, and this is what they said on the TV as well, was the line that they were showing across the field is not one. It's not the official line, and maybe that was incorrect. Yeah. But based on that line, that ball did not cross it. I will say that ball did not cross it based on that line. But I think that wasn't the official line in it, because I could see the first down marker behind it, and it looked like
yeah, baby,
it's over.
Yeah, baby.
They were about to knee it out after I said that fourth down. They were about to knee that one out. But yeah, but I don't think that was a first down on that part either, personally, based on the TV line. But that doesn't mean that was the official line. So maybe it wasn't a first down, or maybe it was a first down. I can't really say. But on that game, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, it just felt like the Bills were just the better team all game long. I was watching the game, like you said, they kept going up by 2 scores. They kept doing all of this. But then you get, Josh Allen strip sacked inside his own 20. They pick it up, they score. That happens. It's hard for a quarterback to hold on to the ball sometimes in those situations. Is what it is. His 2 interceptions that he threw, not bad throws, guys. I mean, not bad throws at all. So,
my question is to both of you guys: what have you seen that's different with this Bills defense? The Bills defense was an absolutely elite defense last year, and for the beginning part of this year, they're starting to get gashed a little bit. I mean, granted, I understand the turnovers. But they don't look like there is a dominant defense, and they added Von Miller in the offseason. That should have made them a lot better. What are you guys seeing on their defense?
Gosh, maybe they're just on the field a lot more now, because, that's an explosive offense that they have. So, that might have to do with it a little bit. But honestly, like they have a really good defensive line, like Ed Oliver up on that defensive front. Like they have a really solid defensive line, but I think it's kind of the people behind them that you got some question marks. Like Edmonds is a pretty solid linebacker. He's good. Tre'Davious White, he's a good cornerback, but I think they're just missing some killers out there in the secondary, like some headhunter type people, some forces to be reckoned with, if you will, back in the secondary. I didn't really see much of that from them today. Just, got some dogs. You got to have some dogs back there, man, to really make your defense take that next step. So maybe that's kind of it, because Von Miller, he's up there in age now. He's been in the league for a hot minute. So he's not the Von Miller that he used to be, back with Denver that he used to be. So yeah. That's the only thing I can really think of, maybe.
You know who would look good in that secondary? Chris Smith.
Chris Smith would play well if you put him next to Tre'Davious White.
He's a dog.
And then you got Tresman Marshall and Matt Milano. All those guys, those 3 guys right there, I think is the key to that defense, especially Tresman or Tre'Davious White in that secondary.
Definitely not Tresman Marshall.
Not Tresman Marshall. Sorry, that's my bad. But anyways, speaking of that defense, quite frankly, I think today the issue really was those turnovers. I genuinely will tell y'all that that's what the problem was today. And the reason I say that is because if you start looking at the numbers of that game, and I watched that whole game and I saw it played out, that's why I kept texting y'all like, why is this game close? Why is this game close? It doesn't feel like it should be. And the reason for that is on third downs, Miami 4 for 16 on third down. So they were getting them off the field consistently. So that defense was standing up. Total yards, only 231 total yards in that game. I mean, that defense held up if they didn't give up 3 turnovers that led to points for that team. That's the issue right there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the Bills are going to have to improve on is as they get deeper into the tournament or the playoffs or whatever the case may be. That defense is going to have to make plays. Josh Allen, incredible athlete, but that offense, it's been stagnant at times. And I know that part of that is because Josh Allen wasn't healthy for a little bit of the season or whatever, and he seems to be healthy now. But that offense can be a little bit stagnant sometimes, and they really do rely on that defense, and it needs to bounce back into shape. You have to think that Hamlin obviously had a big part in that defense because they just really haven't been the same in the last 2 games without him, but I guess that's to be expected. But okay. I know that Jonathan's dying to get to this.
Oh, dude, I'm itching.
Let's go ahead.
This one.
Get into this game.
Look,
go ahead, Jonathan.
I'll start off by saying I have nothing against Minnesota. I have nothing against the Skull community, whatever you hooligans are called up there in the North, whatever. I don't know what you're called, but I have nothing against y'all whatsoever. Nothing bad to say about the Vikings. But I did tell y'all, I tried to tell y'all, and you just need to listen to me. I tried to tell you on the regular season, beware that the Minnesota Vikings are the most fraudulent good team in this league. And it had to do with like point differential over the last 5 games as they were closing the season, close games that they probably shouldn't have been as close as they were. They were struggling in the run game. They were just not they were barely scraping by teams. They were barely getting past. They just like I'm saying, they were in a separate category. Like all the other good teams were like in the top 5 in certain stat categories. And the Minnesota Vikings were like in the middle of the pack amongst everybody else. They were just figuring out ways to win, kind of like them pulling off that amazing come from behind victory against Indianapolis. Like they just found ways to win somehow. And that's what they did all year. And that's why they had this amazing record by the end of the year. And now I said, and not only did I say they were the most fraudulent good team, I said, I'll go ahead and count them as a first round exit in the playoffs. And what do you know? The G-Man roll up on you. They come in there and they take you down 31-24. First round exit, game match check. The doctor wins. Should have listened to me. I would have saved you a whole lot more pain than you're feeling right now.
And do you remember why I agreed with you?
The run game, I believe, is what you talked about with Dalvin Cook.
The run game.
They did not have 61 yards rushing today.
They did not have a consistent run game that could grind out those yards, get the first downs. They were relying on Kirk Cousins to do everything. And you cannot rely on a guy to do everything for you every single week. You have to have a run game that you can rely on. And I'm not saying you got to go for 200 yards every week, but you, as a team, if you can't get close to 100 yards a week, that is a major problem. And I've had hiccups all day, so I apologize. I'm trying to hold them back. But Dalvin Cook, 60 yards a day on 15 carries. That's 4 yards a carry. And that sounds good in theory, but he had an 11-yard carry, so that takes up a sixth of his yards on one play. Yeah. It just every game that I watched them, at no point did I feel like when they needed to, they could run the football. Like if you knew they had to run the football and they couldn't do it, like that's the one thing that we loved about the Georgia program for the last couple of years is that you knew they wanted to run the football and they could still do it. Well, that's what the Vikings couldn't do. And that's why I agree with Jonathan. Not everything else told me that they were a really good football team. The one thing that I didn't like about their team is they couldn't rely on the running game at any point.
Yeah, I think that was huge for them. Like at the end of the day, it comes down. We talked about this all season long. In the NFL, if you cannot run the ball, it puts way too much on your quarterback. And at that point, the defense can just sit there and drop back in coverage and eat you up all day long. And I think that's exactly what happened today on that. He didn't throw any interceptions or anything, but I think it just kept them from being able to get chunk yardage. They really weren't able to put that much on the field. But on the other side of the field, Daniel Jones, shouts to him, 300 yards and 2 touchdowns today, no interceptions on 24 for 35 passing. That's a pretty daggum good game. And on the other side, what you mix that with is 142 yards of rushing, which, by the way, leading rusher in that game, Daniel Jones, 17 carries for 78 yards. He out-carried Saquon Barkley in that game. And Saquon Barkley only had 53 yards carrying. And going back to your point that you just made a second ago, he had a 28-yard long. So half of his yardage came on one single carry. Daniel Jones was their running game and their passing game. I mean, the dude contributed for 479 yards of total offense. That was the game. Daniel Jones put the team on his back today. and he absolutely delivered in a playoff spot. And I was one personally that sat here, or not here because this was before the show, but when the Giants took Daniel Jones, it's like, why would you take him out of Duke like in the first round, high pick? Didn't really make sense. But today, this is why you take a guy like that in the playoffs. He can put the team on his back and absolutely carry you. And I mean, he had more total yards if you were to combine his rushing and passing than the team actually ended up with in the entire game. He had 200 or 479 yards of total offense himself, but the team finished with 431. That's nuts.
Pump the brakes on that. This is why you take Daniel Jones.
No.
I don't know the teams are
I'm not saying
lining
you
up
take
for
Daniel Jones in general. I'm not saying Daniel Jones specifically is the reason you take. I'm saying the reason you take a quarterback at like pick number 6 in the first round is so he can put the team on his back in a playoff game.
Look.
And that's what he did today. That's why you use a first round pick on a quarterback, is so they can, in these type of situations, do that for you. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is an all-time, like all-pro quarterback or anything like that, but he came through in a moment that you needed him and absolutely delivered.
I'm going to say this. I like what Dan said about, like, you can't be depending on a guy like Kirk Cousins to do everything for you and that type of thing. And this is what I'll say. It's kind of like, I kind of compare it to Subway a little bit, Subway, the fast food chain, because you don't want Subway being the sandwich chain that carries everything for it. It's good in spurts. It smells good a little bit every now and then. A Subway sandwich is good. Just like every now and then Kirk Cousins can step up and make a play. So from now on to this day, I'm going to be calling Kirk Cousins Cold Cut Kirk. That's his name now for me. Cold Cut Kirk, because he's only good in spurts and he's only good sometimes, not all the time.
Absolutely, because sometimes you go in the Subway, the bread is fresh, the bread is soft, and it's absolutely delicious. Other times you walk in there and it's stale, and it's just like
sometimes it hits, sometimes it don't.
Sometimes it smacks.
Sometimes it hits the spot. That's a fact.
Sometimes Kirk Cousins come through there like, you like
Cold
that?
Cut Kirk. That's what I'm saying. Cold Cut Kirk.
Well, there's a reason that he ended up in Minnesota with that contract as a starting quarterback, because he started to step up when he was with Washington, and he had a couple of really good games after coming into that as the backup take over and all. That's what happens a lot, and that's what honestly, like, kind of changing gears a little bit. I'm interested to see what the 49ers do in this offseason, because right now they have 3 quarterbacks that are all starting caliber overall. I think that the one you get rid of and you try to play out is you get rid of Jimmy G this time, because he's the one that takes up all your money. And then you have Trey Lance and you have Brock Purdy, and you see what those guys can do on their side of it. But backup quarterbacks in the NFL, man, all you have to do, Kirk Cousins being the prime example of it, all you have to do is put together a good 4-game stretch and throw for, an average of 300 yards in those games. And all of a sudden they throw money at you. And now you have this 5-6 year contract for like $100 or $200 million or whatever it is that the going rate is. That's all it takes is a backup quarterback. And right now, Brock Purdy is going to make that a very difficult decision in San Francisco.
We all give Daniel Jones a hard time, right? So I'm not going to apologize for giving him a hard time, because he's an average quarterback most times. But if you look at that roster, the fact that they have a winning record and the fact that they just won a playoff game with that roster, I mean, outside of Saquon Barkley, is there anybody on that team you really want? Isaiah Hodgkins is their leading receiver, 8 for 105. Do you know who he is? Where did he go to school?
Darius Slayton's good. I like Darius Slayton.
Andrew Thomas, he's good.
Well, I'm talking about skill players. I'm not talking about
players. Hey, speaking of that, shouts to Lawrence Cager getting a catch today. And by the way, did y'all know that he's playing tight end now instead of a wide receiver? Didn't know that until he had a catch today.
He's a dog.
He's a dog.
He's a big boy. No, but I mean,
he's a big boy.
Darius Slayton's okay. Saquon Barkley had a lot of catches out of the backfield. Richie James, Daniel Bellinger. Does that do anything for you? And then you got Lawrence Cager. I mean, those are the guys catching passes for him. I mean, he doesn't have Jefferson, Jamar Chase. He doesn't have Kyle Pitts. He doesn't have anybody like that.
They haven't had that since Odell left.
That's what I'm saying. I have to at least tip my hat to the guy and say that he got it done with that group.
Yeah.
And I tell you, listen, they're in the NFL. They're good.
They're probably losing in the next round, but they got a good matchup with Minnesota today.
They're the TCU of the NFL playoffs. Yeah. Like, all right, you got your first round win, but just be happy that you're in the second round, because
let's see the NFC. They're in the NFC. Who they got to play? They probably got to play the 49ers next. It's either the 49ers or Cowboys or Buccaneers.
He's
And if
calling
they
you the
get the
jinx, Dan.
You got to put this on the screen because my boy Zach, who we love, he supports all of our products. He out here telling me I'm a jinx. Zach, we were lockstep. You and me 2 seconds ago, we were just talking about Bill Backup Mafia.
He'll switch up on you real quick. You got to be
Man,
careful.
he just hit, dude. He just Godfather or was it Casino? Or no, it wasn't Casino. It was Goodfellas. He just Goodfellas me. He took me into the back room and shot me in the back of the head. Thanks, Zach.
Jesus. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do this because we got the last game of the day coming up soon at 8:15. So let's go ahead and get into our picks for that Monday or
Tonight and tomorrow.
tonight. The 8:15, you got the Ravens and Bengals, and tomorrow you get the Cowboys and Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. So let's start with tonight, right? Ravens Bengals. It's a home game for the Bengals. They are currently an 8-point favorite in that game. And before we get into it, guys, Lamar Jackson's still out this week, by the way.
Let me go first.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you just hit on what I was about to hit on, Stoddard. Lamar Jackson is not playing. And there was also some choice words said about Lamar Jackson by some of his teammates. I can't remember who came out and said it, but basically said, like, his teammate said, I'm out here playing hurt, but he's not. He's not putting his body on the line for this team. So I'm kind of questioning his toughness and loyalty to this team, yada, yada, whatever. I'm not only going to take Cincinnati in this one because of Joey Burr and Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to say that Cincinnati blows them out, and I'm going to say it's not even close.
Well, Michael Vick also had some choice words for Lamar Jackson, basically criticizing him for not playing. And you know who told me that? My daughter. My 10-year-old daughter came downstairs. She said, Daddy, Michael Vick said something about Lamar Jackson. I was like, oh, wow.
Look at her.
I did not know that. Look at my girl. My girl's stepping up to the plate. No, listen, I'm going to take Macaulay Culkin and the Bengals tonight. The Bengals, you know what? Zach, you're right. I may be a jinx because I said the Bengals were good, and the last time I said that they got smoked. So, but I think the Bengals are going to win tonight. I think, and if they don't, then you're right, Zach. I am the mush.
I'm going to go with you guys on this one, too. I think it's a no-brainer, especially without Lamar Jackson, and they're on the road. And you got to think the last time the Bengals that they played last week, but, you know, they're coming off of a game where they were involved in the Damar Hamlin stuff, and they've kind of got a lot on their shoulders and as well, and I think that they're ready to take a step forward from that. T. Higgins, look for him to have a big game. You know, he felt, you know, I feel like a lot of pain got put on him because he was involved in the hit on Damar Hamlin specifically. And even some people publicly started trying to say something about him being, what was it? Scott, the dude on Get Up. Well, I don't remember what his name is right now. Bart Scott. He even said that he put blame on T. Higgins for that hit. He literally said it was because of the way he like drove into his chest on.
Dude, he hit him with his shoulder.
He did exactly what you're supposed to do as a ball carrier in there, and it just was unfortunate. But yeah, that was Bart Scott on Get Up talking like that. So I think that T. Higgins, after seeing that Damar Hamlin's doing well, his heart kind of gets a little bit of a lift, and he can actually play football again. So look for them. I mean, this is an unmatched game right here. You don't have Lamar Jackson on the other side, but on the Bengals offense, you get Joe Burrow, you got Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I mean, these dudes are about to just absolutely eat. It's an 8-point spread, and I think it's a 10-plus point game as well. I'm taking the same route that Jonathan is.
You just sparked something in my mind. We are in such a different time and place. If you think about guys like Jack Lambert, they would have taken pride in almost killing somebody on the football field because that's how they played back then. And now, like somebody like they're trying to shame this guy. Like
it was one guy on ESPN. It was ridiculously weird stance to take, but that's exactly what he did. Bart Scott lost a lot of respect from me on that one because I don't think there was any scenario where you put it on a guy. It's not like he went out there headhunting, took the guy's head off. Like we've seen some hits that led to concussions or led to even like broken necks and stuff like that. That somebody actually went and headhunted. It was a fluke accident, and so you can't put blame on anybody for that one specifically. But that I lost a lot of respect for Bart Scott on that.
I mean, play. Jack Lambert literally tried to kill people on the field.
I mean, back in the day, they were headhunting, legitimately,
and they were trying to snap people's necks. Yeah. They would have them on the ground, and they would twisting their heads like just trying to snap their necks. So anyway, let's move on to the next game. We're going to get
last game to talk about of the wild card weekend is Dallas at Tampa Bay, and guys, I don't know about y'all, but it's a 2.5 point spread for Dallas in this game. How are we feeling about this?
It's going to pain me so much to say this because it's like It's like two of my least favorite things in the NFL going up against one another. Tom Brady and the freaking Cowboys. But Tom Brady has done a lot more dirty to my fandom than the Dallas Cowboys have. And so I think I'm going to be going with the Cowboys on this one just because nothing would make me happier than for Tom Brady to get sent out of the freaking playoffs in the first round like he deserves to be. So I'll pull for the Cowboys this weekend, and I'll pray on their downfall the next. I got the Cowboys this week.
I mean, you have a team that won his division and they are rewarded with a freaking home game with an 8-9 record. Like, you've got to be shitting me, boys. I mean, this is like that
Pretty
same
bad.
crap.
Losing record. Yeah.
This is the same crap they want to do in the college football playoff and just give the 4 division winners a bye. And go write that down on paper and look how that would have played out this year, by the way. But with that said, I am not a Cowboys fan. I did like them back in the day when they had the triplets. I will. But I hope the Cowboys beat the shit out of them. I just do. You're right, Harrison. You just got Jonathan and me so far to pick your team, and we are actively rooting for your team to win this game.
I'm ashamed.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump on board with you guys as well because we talked about this. The NFC South was just so freaking bad this year. I mean, you're talking about a team, like you just said, Dan, you hit it on the head just a second ago. We're talking about an 8-9 team. You have a losing record, and you get a home game for the first round of the playoffs. It's asinine right there. That's freaking ridiculous. There's no reason that's how that should play out, but Dallas being 12-5, they get to go on the road in that game. They're only favored by 2.5 points, but I think they cover that as well. And win that game on the road. Tom Brady seems to make some playoff magic, but I don't really know that he has,
that's
too
why
much
it's
luck
2.5.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's got that playoff magic and kind of stuff. But we'll see how it plays out tomorrow night. I think I think it'll end up being more than 2.5 points. I think Dallas is a much better football team overall if they come to play like they should, because that sometimes is the case. It depends on if the team is who they are capable of being that day. We've seen that in different games. Like the Bills today, that game should have been a lot higher scoring for them or a lot bigger of a win for them as well. But it wasn't, and that was because it wasn't necessarily their best game overall. I think if Dallas plays a good enough game, it's not a close game for them. Anything else before I wrap us up, fellas? No,
I'm Gucci, man.
I think Anthony said something in the comments there, and I know you wanted to say something about that, Jeremiah.
Yes, we're definitely going to talk about that. That's how I was going to close this out as well. At the end of the day, this is a NFL podcast right here that we're talking about. But as you can see behind Dan, it's a national championship logo from last year. I'm wearing last year's national championship shirt. We are all Georgia fans in the community. He's wearing a national championship shirt as well. Today's a sad day in Dog Nation. This is a day that we sit here and we try to have a conversation about football and we try to do all this. But at the end of the day, in both of our minds, or all three of our minds right now, we're sitting here thinking about Devin Willock and Chandler LaCroix. Chandler LaCroix, recruiting assistant for Georgia. They were in a car accident last night, and unfortunately, their lives were taken. Willock being 20 years old and Chandler being 21 years old. It's just extremely sad in the Georgia football community. And personally, it hurt a lot this morning to see it. They were celebrating a national championship yesterday, and it's crazy how quickly that life can change. So what I urge everybody, and I'll let you guys talk for a second after this as well, what I urge everybody is, your loved ones, your significant others, your family members, make sure you give them a hug, tell them you love them. We're not promised tomorrow. And it's really sad when stuff like this happens to somebody or to anybody in general. And then you see some people like this that have such bright futures and it's taken away from them because we're not promised tomorrow. So you got to live life like today is your last day on earth and make the most of it every single day and tell everybody that you are close to, that you love them. Boys, I love you guys. You guys mean a lot to me. So it's a tough day in the Georgia football community.
So this one hit me really hard. And before I say what I'm going to say, also say a prayer for Tory Bowles, and McClendon. They were also in the car and they were injured. I think McClendon is okay.
I think he's out of the
hospital. Still in the hospital. But this one, when I woke up and I read this morning, this one hit me really hard because he was 20 years old. He's a giant human. My brother was 6'6", 375 pounds. And my brother was killed at 20 years old in a car accident. He was actually on a dirt bike and got hit by a car. So anytime somebody young dies, it's awful. But there are my brother was a massive human, and this young man was a massive human. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because when they're that big, they are larger than life, and you think they're invincible. My brother was so freaking big. Like, he would joke around with me and just grab a hold of me. I am not little. You've seen me. You both have been up. I'm not a little guy. My brother would throw me around like a rag doll. I didn't think that there was anything that could hurt my brother. I watched him in a car roll off of an embankment, and the car rolled 10 times, and he gets out laughing. Like, I didn't think there was anything that could hurt my brother, and he got killed. And I know that his family members, I know they felt like there was nothing that could ever hurt him. He's 20 years old. He just won a second national championship. He was out having a good time. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And for him to lose his life, it's tragic, and it breaks my heart. I mean, it hits me hard. Like, I had to deal with the emotions of my brother again this morning, because that's why it hit me. I'm not trying to make it about me. I'm just saying it hit me that way. And moreover, there's another family out there that's going to have to deal with this like I do. And I mean, when somebody dies at 50 or 60 years old, that's awful, right? Nobody wants that, but they had a chance to live. This guy hadn't even had a chance to start his life, boys.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that both of you said. One thing that I would just say is you can never tell anybody in this world that you love them too much. You can never say it too many times. You can never tell them enough. Always say it. Always let the people that you care about know that you love them, because, again, next day is not guaranteed. And when God calls your name, he calls you, and he calls you home, and there's nothing we can do about it. So y'all keep living your lives. Be safe. Obviously, a sad day for Dog Nation, especially after winning back-to-back national titles. It's unfortunate, especially for those such young lives, young and precious lives, talented lives, that they had to leave us so soon. But we will always remember them for their talent and for their love that they always shared to all of us, especially us fans. So we appreciate all of them and everything that they did for us, and we always remember them in good spirits. But yeah, definitely just wanted to get that out there on the show, especially because this is a UGA-oriented YouTube page that we are taking part in and that we support and that we are here bringing you content for. So that was definitely something that we all three felt like should be talked about tonight. So we wanted to do that for you guys. But now, Starter, we can let you close out the show properly.
And I will, before we do that, I'm going to say, like, one story. Last thing I just thought about was, I don't know if you guys saw it. Did you guys see that tweet that somebody shared yesterday around 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
Where they actually ran into Devin Willock in, it looked like a Texas Roadhouse in the picture, is what it looked like to me. And he took a picture with the kid. He sat there and just kind of made it his day and let him wear his championship ring from last year.
Yeah.
And it just brought so much joy to this kid's heart, and took time out of his day to do that. So you're talking about a young man that is living some of the best years of his life right now, and on top of the world for what he's dealing with. But he definitely took time to acknowledge some of the young people around him and the fans around him and stuff. He's a very genuine young man that was taken from everybody in Dog Nation and his families.
Don't gloss over the fact that Chandler's gone too, right? And she was a huge contributor to the program. She was loved by a lot of different people. Just look at the joy. And Brooks, our buddy Brooks, took a picture of her on Monday night, and he has it on his Twitter today. A picture of her and another staffer on the field, and just look at the joy in her face. And that joy is now gone from the world, and that is a real
absolutely. Shame. So everybody, I'll close out the show by saying, hug everybody that you know, that you love. Make sure you tell them every single chance that you get, let them know. And just keep the Willock family and the LaCroix family in your prayers, and all of Dog Nation, because I know all those players and coaches and staff members that were really close to them are probably feeling very, very down today. So make sure you keep them on your thoughts and prayers as well. But we love you all. We will see you guys next week. I know we kind of had a somber ending to the show, but I feel like it was needed as well. But we love you guys. Let's go watch some more football tonight, kind of get our spirits up a little bit, and we will see you guys next week in the next round of the playoffs.
Suck it, Minnesota.